Welcome to the Chief of Cybersecurity podcast, where we discuss relevant information surrounding protecting networks, devices, and data from unauthorized access or criminal use from hackers. Also, industry best practices and the cybersecurity workforce. Made possible by CMIS. Learn more at cmis.net. For a list of publications, visit DwayneHart.com.
All right, Rich Casanova here, joined alongside Mr. Dwayne Hart, and welcome to Season 4, Episode 10 of the Cybersecurity Podcast. This is the second of a two-part series on cybersecurity leadership, which is right in my wheelhouse, and I really enjoyed the last episode. Looking forward to this one. In this episode, we're going to be discussing, amongst many things, why is it crucial to develop a strong cybersecurity culture within your organization. We'll explore essential strategies for cybersecurity leadership, discover how to foster collaboration and promote best practices, outlining practical steps for organizations can take to cultivate a cybersecurity-first approach, and finally, how to make your cybersecurity culture so robust, this is a good one, so robust that hackers will think twice, maybe 3 or 4 times before they actually contemplate targeting your organization. All right.
Wow.
And you just heard the laugh or the response from none other than, let me introduce the man of the hour, who's not only the podcast host of this show, but is also a best-selling author of the book Cybersecurity Mindset, YouTube creator. All that content and more can be found at DwayneHart.com. In addition, he's a former Navy officer, CPO, 20-year service, and he'll talk about at the tail end of that. Much of that was spent in leadership, in the leadership role, and teaching, coaching leadership. But he's also a cybersecurity consultant, owns a cybersecurity consulting firm, sought after speaker. I'm running out of things. And then Forbes contributing author. So Mr. Dwayne Hart. So today's episode, as I mentioned at the top, is all about cybersecurity leadership and ways to develop your organization's company culture. So let's begin with why this is so important and why now.
Hey, you know what? I knew I was supposed to start off and give the whys, but there's a couple of things I want to say to the audience here. Up and coming here in January of 2025, I actually have a speaking event called Cybersecurity Leadership Starts Long Before an Attack. And it's a virtual event that I'll be speaking at. So I just wanted to bring that out to the audience as well. And also, too, thank you for promoting me. I was an enlisted man in the United States Navy. So I was a chief petty officer. I retired as E7. Okay. But thank you for promoting me. But you know what, Rich? I am having so much fun with this leadership discussion. And although I know that this is the second podcast, I think that we should add 2 more onto this and just make it a 4-part series.
I'm on board with that, and you're welcome for the promotion. And we got a bit of a scoop here for our listeners about this upcoming event in January. But and don't give it away now, but stay tuned. We got another scoop at the end talking about some. I'll give you a hint of it. It's about publishing, but we'll save that to the end of the show as what we call in the business a cliffhanger. So back to our discussion points about, this topic of culture, cybersecurity culture, why it's so important.
Well, the cybersecurity culture is very important because it's the model for your cybersecurity program. It is a definition of how that organization should operate. Every organization has a different type of cybersecurity culture. But let me step back for a minute. What is a culture? A culture is a group of people or processes that work together and think alike and drive that same mission. Now, we as people live through culture because our families have a certain way that we live and everybody follows those same traditions. So let's transition that over to cybersecurity for a second here. And knowing that when you have an enterprise with about 10,000 people, you want everybody to follow the mission of that organization and to be a part of that culture. So what people normally learn is that when they go from one company to the next, the culture is slightly different. And it is different because of the way that the organization chooses to approach cybersecurity. So if you have been working in the federal government space for a bit and you decide to transition to corporate America, that's 2 different cultures. So you're going to see some differences in the way that cybersecurity is approached, but that is because of the mission. And, in that statement, the government is a service-based organization, where you get to corporate America, they are profit-based. So it's going to be some slight differences in the way that cybersecurity is so approached. Now some of the elements that go along with a culture is that you see people speak the same language, right? Because it's certain terms that they use. So they would speak the same language. So you see a certain mock-up of certain teams, okay? And also, too, when it comes to the leadership perspective, all the leaders have bought into that one mission and vision that the company has. And those leaders have to sell that mission and vision to their staff members. And also, too, you will go find that in that particular culture that they process cybersecurity in a certain manner that may be different from someone else. But at the end, everyone is driving to make sure that they keep the environment protected and keeping hackers lazy, okay? Lazy means that they don't have anything to do. So when they have something to do, say they want to come around and they want to attack your environment, right? So you want to have that type of culture where you have people that buy in and say, hey, I like this company and I want to be here. But there are certain things that you have to do in order to have that buy-in structure from your groups of people that work for you. Right.
100%. I mean, so, because a lot of organizations in business, but just in their company culture, but, we're talking about cybersecurity leadership culture, is the C-levels or whoever the managers in certain role will define and establish the culture or the mission. But that's where a lot of times the disconnect is at, is what I'm hearing you saying, is that they fail to communicate that mission or those objectives within the entire organization, but not just communicate like as in a, just pushing it out there or sending it out, but get, a true leader has the skill set to be able to not just communicate that, but to have them, like you said, buy in and actively involved.
Yeah.
So they feel part of that's their role. Which is a thread we've been talking about in these two episodes, is not only, the cybersecurity leadership, but, identifying roles within the organization, right? So talk about, we're talking about people. So talk about the human risk and human firewalls, because that's where you can, drop the ball, so to speak, right?
Yes. Here goes the term. The meaning of human firewall means that somebody have that defensive mindset in their focus.
Mm-hmm.
That comes from a buy-in structure. If, per se, that the leadership can find a way to have their team members and the other manager to buy into the concept of how that company wants to operate cybersecurity, you are going to build your human firewalls. Now, I want to put a practical definition on human firewalls. Now, that does not mean that someone is standing outside a computer center, right, with a weapon. No, that's not a human firewall. They're called a security guard.
Right.
When we think of a human firewall, we are thinking someone that has a defensive mindset. They are always trying to defend something. Because firewalls are put in place to filter out traffic. It's to only let certain traffic either be transmitted out of the environment or to let certain traffic come into the environment. So when you think of a human firewall, those are the ones that are standing there and thinking about ways to defend that enterprise. Now, how do you build a human firewall? Well, first, it starts when that new employee first come on board, because you as a cybersecurity leader has to have a relationship with your HR team. Because when someone come on board as your new employee, they don't particularly know to go right, left. So if you lose that person, and I've always believed in the 2 weeks window, right? If you lose their interest in 2 weeks, then that could be very bad. So when the new employee comes on board, you definitely have to set the vision to them. Explain to them how you operate. Explain to them how the culture operates, because when new employees come on board, certain times you're going to hear some terms such as my last company, right? And I don't know why people really have that inside of their head, because they want to take things from their last company and bring over to their new company, which is fine
Right.
in certain situations, but you're in a different culture now. So you have to kind of what I call deprogram yourself and to come on board to the second company and realize that it's a different culture. And there are people that fit in certain cultures and certain people that don't fit in certain cultures, because you have people that are really, really not used to managers that are very forcing, and they may take that. And you have people that are used to being pulled by the hand, right, and shown how to go step A, B, C, or D. But at the end of the day, someone has to understand the culture and to bring themselves up to speed so they fit in that particular culture. And I make that notice in the cybersecurity mindset when I talk a lot, especially about a culture, is that you have to have that buy-in structure. Because a lot of times when we discuss cybersecurity culture, we are really talking about the people, the processes, but also, too, we have to focus on technology, because certain technologies are not fit for certain cultures. All right, that's just the way it operates. So you really have to think about how you onboard technology. Even so with AI, AI may not fit in your culture, right? And it may not be a tool, something you want to bring on board. So when you start to look at your culture, you're always going to look at the people, and you're going to look at the technologies that you have. And also as a leader, to look at the way that you communicate both of those. Maybe looking at the way that you communicate, the way that technology need to get managed, and also, too, looking at the board and trying to communicate how your people and your technologies are working very well just to keep cybersecurity intact. So it's not a hard type of task or skill set to have. I just think that if you understand how to process people and to process technologies and to communicate to C-suite professionals, you can definitely build that award-winning cybersecurity culture that is focused.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it always has to, hinge on being intentional and having, some goals, objectives clearly defined, not just for, whatever department you're within, but within the entire organization. So I mentioned earlier in the introduction, you're, in addition to everything else you got on your plate, you're also a Forbes contributing author. So I'm going to reference as a resource for our listeners if you want to expound on it or not. But one of the articles you wrote was Mastering the Art of Building a Top-Tier Cybersecurity Team. Within that article, there was a great reference to organizations, constantly monitoring and communicating. And what I thought was interesting is reinventing their team-based leadership. So this is always a fluid process, right? Mm-hmm. It's not something you just set because, you referenced it several times about, the hackers are not staying idle, right? And so you can't as well. So if you want to either reference that or we can pivot to this concept of a singular vision.
Oh, you know what? I'm not going to lose my audience, but I was writing down that same information about singular vision. Do you have a camera on my head here somewhere?
Exactly, yeah.
Come on, Rich. Let's just go ahead to singular vision for a second.
All right, jump into it, brother. Yeah.
Well, when I think of a singular vision, then you're not trying to incorporate things from the outside, such as my last company, right? So you have that vision, which is focused on that company. Because when you build that singular vision, you're saying company ABC, I am here to help that company out. Okay. And I'm going to follow the policies and the procedures to drive that cybersecurity culture. Right? Because, a singular vision means that you are definitely looking so down a tunnel, right? But it's for a good reason, though, because a lot of times when we talk about people that are looking down a tunnel, see, they got that one vision, right? But you want them to look outside of that tunnel. But So when it comes to a cybersecurity culture, it is good to have that tunnel vision because you're thinking about that company, right? And you want to help that culture grow. One of the things too, I always like to say is that when you try to build that cybersecurity culture, there are some things you have to add in as you begin to practice through, because no culture is perfect, right? Because we know that through cybersecurity leadership or like your traditional leadership practices, you always going to have voids and you're going to have some deficiencies. The idea is, how do you manage those? How do you make your decisions? And a lot of those decisions are going back to situation awareness and learning your environment. And I will just keep bouncing that when it comes to cybersecurity leadership all day long, is that situation awareness is very important, because if you don't understand your environment, you are definitely going to set yourself up for failure. All right. So one of the other things I want to bring up too is that, when you have these different teams that are working together, you will often hear problems or like statements say, hey, it's the cybersecurity people fault. Well, it's the networking team fault. Well, it's the help desk team fault. You as a leader need to clean that up, all right? Because at the end of the day, hackers do not discriminate. They don't. So you have to build those teams and have those teams to work together. And secondly is, you cannot exclude people, because when you start to exclude people, this when the buy-in structure fails, all right? Because you have to include people and to your culture and just the way you operate. Even so, too, through your team meetings, maybe you having a meeting and have one person to carry that meeting for you and to talk. Because when that person is talking, everyone gets to understand the person, who they're from, and, and seeing that they got in the team, and have everybody to be a part of the team. Because there's a term I use called interdependence of operations. So it means that the help desk people cannot survive some of their tasks without cybersecurity. Cybersecurity cannot survive without talking to network and cloud people. So there's a interdependence that goes on amongst all the different teams. And see, that's part of that culture. See, that's part of building that culture and having individuals to understand that and not to exclude themselves out of the picture.
Absolutely. And so again, there's this theme of you mentioned, people within the organization starting to play the blame game. So if you're hearing these blame game type of statements, what it really kind of the buck stops here kind of situation applies, where that really is where the leadership team has dropped the ball and they didn't, they realize, there's a lack of buy-in from within that organization, because, that all those different departments are tied together and they should feel part of a team, much like a sports team. You can't blame a certain player if, the team kind of needs to step up and reinforce all that. So we got a little bit of time remaining here. I wanted to finish at least one of our closing topics. Talk about, outlining these practical steps for your organization to cultivate a cybersecurity first approach. And that's an interesting term. Maybe kind of rewind into time, elaborate a little bit on the premise of cybersecurity first approach.
Okay. You know what? When we speak of cybersecurity first approach, it is putting cybersecurity at the front line. Okay. Let's not take cybersecurity and actually put it in the back line and then hope that
like
cybersecurity,
it's an afterthought.
Yes, right, is that it's going to operate. One of the ways that I think organizations can strengthen that concept is to go look at their risk approach. How is it that you manage risk? What is your approach to cyber risk, right? Do you even take it seriously? Are you one of those organizations that really, really take cybersecurity and those risks and operate maybe on a stringent program, or is just that you work on a loose program? So you really have to take cybersecurity and actually put it at the front line, all right? Because that's part of that culture, is to have cybersecurity at the front line. Because if cybersecurity is not at the front line, you're going to be working in a reactive state. So when you work in that reactive state, you're always trying to catch up. But we know that the technology industry and cybersecurity changes daily. And there are different type of events and things that occur. And so if you're in that reactive state, then all your issues are just going to be piling up. And it gets to a point where hackers know more about your enterprise than you do. And you make it easy for them to carry out their tactics. So you have to operate cybersecurity at the front line. So that means that you have a proactive mindset and your environment is proactive. None of this can be achieved overnight. And I'm going to make that statement. And I can contest to, a lot of the things that I talk about because I face some of the same challenges in the military, right? Where you got a brand new ship and you have new people that come on board. A captain has to work that through his crew for a while, just to kind of get everyone acclimated and just to get them on board. But also, too, the captain has to set that culture up, where that culture is going to operate. So as a cybersecurity champion, you are the captain of cybersecurity.
Right, yeah.
Right.
Well, I mean, you know how I love analogy. So I'm just envisioning, if an attack was being brought upon your ship, missile or whatever, torpedo or whatever, or just somebody firing in the ship, you can't have one of the onboard, people saying, well, it's not my job I'm the, I cook in the kitchen or I do whatever other task on board. I see this attack coming at, it's not my role to react to that, right? I'm just going to ignore it. I mean, that's kind of like a very simplistic approach, but in terms of cybersecurity, you can't just say, back to the blame game, or saying, well, it looks like there was something suspicious happening, and they're not wearing their hacker's hat. And they go, well, that's the cybersecurity department team. It looks a little odd to me. It's like what that phrase of like, if you see something, say something. This applies, right? That mantra. Yeah.
So when that happens, there's a failure of accountability because someone does not want to take ownership. And secondly, too, there is a failure in your buy-in structure. The buy-in structure is very important because, see, we use the buy-in structure on a daily basis, right? The reason that people do business together is because they have bought into each other's product.
Right.
So when we look at the cybersecurity industry and looking at leadership, if per se you can establish that buy-in structure, then you can have people at the front line that wants to do their job. Because when we really look at cybersecurity leadership, CISOs at the top of the line. Chief Information Security Officers are the gatekeepers. Those are the ones that are held responsible for driving cybersecurity for the organizations, right? You, per se, is the gatekeeper. So, like, you are the person that stands between the board members and everybody else in that organization when it comes to cybersecurity. So you have to find ways to establish a buy-in structure. And there is no right or wrong answer to it, but there are tools that you can use. And, we talk about trying to communicate early, and you communicate often. Make sure that you understand your environment, and also too, looking at your risk approach. Okay, how do you approach risk, and how do you want to sell that vision to the rest of your team members and managers, especially about risk and how we want to do it? Because I want to bring this up. I think that one of the problems that happen when it comes to a cybersecurity culture is that there are people that are standing there and working and pretty much are so afraid to announce cybersecurity issues, right? So I believe that you have to change that culture where you have people that want to present issues as they appear versus trying to hold issues at hostage. Because what that does is that that per se will go increase your risk stake. So you really want to sell that pitch and let people know that they're not going to be punished if they find an issue. Because most people think, oh, if I find this issue and report it, then I may not have a job because they're going to put the issue on me. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. They don't want to be the whistleblower or like, if they make a statement or bring something to the leadership team's attention and it turns out, is a false alarm or distraction or wasn't what they thought, then they feel like, well, I don't want to take the heat for that, so to speak. Right. So I'll just stay low, stay cool. But that's not going to win for anybody. And then, all right. So Dwayne, so we have just a few minutes remaining here. So what I like about this, this singular vision, it's really a holistic, I think the, tie-in, this is a holistic approach, right, to your cybersecurity culture. And earlier you spoke about, you kind of weaved throughout the conversation about this premise of information sharing for situational awareness, which is for our listeners a great reference point to that is in your book, The Cybersecurity Mindset. You take a deep dive into this topic of situational awareness in chapter 9. And for our listeners, I hope you really enjoyed this episode. And we talked about at the top of the show, if you follow these principles, what Mr. Dwayne Hart is talking about, and you can find more at dwaynehart.com in terms of his book, the podcast, sports articles. And so at the end of the day, these hackers are going to think twice, maybe 3 or 4 times, or they're going to just pass before even contemplating targeting the organization.
Well,
so in closing here, Dwayne, as we mentioned at the top, our teaser, our cliffhanger, is you have a scoop. You have a bit of an announcement to make, possibly about something coming soon.
Oh, yes. Well, I got two. I just want to tell the audience here is that as a leader, when you see risk, sometimes you can turn those into rewards, because I have a Forbes article that actually talks about this topic as well. Here is that because some people may think there's some type of reprisal that's going to happen, like they're going to lose their job or they fear being terminated because they find issues. But risk is the time for you to see where you fail so that you can improve the process. Because if you never see faults in your system, or if you think that you're 100% safe as a cyber leader, you just set your environment up for failure. Okay, so let's keep that on the table. But I just want to tell the listeners that I've been thinking about this for a bit, is that I wanted to move my authoring and writing into a second level. And someone asked me, said, what is your next book that you're going to write about?
Right.
All right. And I said, well, the Cybersecurity Mindset is going to be the only cybersecurity book that I ever write. And then I've been contemplating this over the past couple of months. Then I said, you know what? I think that I want to put another book out, but I want to write it on cybersecurity leadership and development. Now, my audience, that's all I'm going to tell you, because over the next couple of months, you're going to see a series of a piece of candy that I'm going to give you, all right, about my next book. So what I want you to do is to go to my website, check out the podcast, and also too, I just completely redone my website. And it has cyber news. It has my podcast, my speaking, and also my speaking location. It has everything you would want to know about me when it comes to writing and podcasting. You can find on my DwayneHart.com website. Excuse me for that. I'm so happy about this. But anyway, that book is going to be out next year. It's not this year.
Okay.
But it'll be out next year, very, very early. But I'm currently working on it, and it's on cybersecurity leadership, because I think that that's a missing piece of this industry, and I really want to bring it forth from somebody that has served in the military and really understand leadership. But also, I taught leadership, and I developed leadership courses, and also too, I transitioned into cybersecurity. So why not take all 3 of those and put those in a book so that individual can understand how to take leadership to the next level. But it's going to focus on cybersecurity, so you can get that perspective in as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And because you can have strategies, tactics, and so forth. But if you don't have somebody at the helm, taking ownership of, the direction and, having a leader at the forefront to, guide the organization, it's kind of all from you, whatever. So, all right. So well said, Mr. Hart. So I'm going to close things out. And apparently maybe in episode 11 and 12, we're going to continue the conversation on leadership. So look forward to that. Again, Rich Casanova signing off on behalf of Dwayne Hart. We'll see you next time.
Take care, my audience.
You've been listening to the Chief of Cybersecurity podcast, where we hope you've gained knowledge to improve your cybersecurity mindset. Visit DwayneHart.com to learn more about publications, show notes, and more information on cybersecurity.